right, Steph Tuss, welcome to the Crushing Chaos with Law Firm Mentor podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So this is like such an honor. I am like fangirling here because you have been such an instrumental part of my own growth journey. And when I tell people about the fact that it took kind of getting to the right place and finding the right message in the right way, I talk about David Nagel, but you as a CEO were very much a part of not just ushering me in, but also a part of coaching me. And you also gave me some very, very powerful moments that just transform the way that I look at things. So thank you for agreeing to do this. I'm really excited to have you here and to have this conversation.
I'm excited to be here. Super excited.
All right. So why don't we dive in with introducing you to the world? For anyone that doesn't know you, other than the fact that you are the CEO of Life Is Now, tell us about you and tell us about what you do for Life Is Now.
So I'm really, the CEO is kind of a big overarching term. I'm really kind of the operator. So within Life Is Now, David's very much the visionary. And it's my job as the integrator, which I think is a more appropriate, like makes more sense of what my role is. I take his vision and I make it so. So I'm kind of the puppet master behind everything, managing team, making sure we're on track with sales, looking at the finances. Like I really am the integrator of Life Is Now. And I also have a love of teaching. So I'm also involved with the teaching and coaching of our own clients because mindset will only take you so far. You also need the nuts and bolts of how to, well, you know this, how to set up systems, right? How to manage people, how to be a leader. So we really balance each other nicely because you need the foundation of what a successful mindset looks like, what a successful business needs in terms of a mindset. And also you need the nuts and bolts, the how-tos. And that's really where I come into play.
Yeah. So the nuts and bolts, that's of course the fun part for me. I love the spreadsheets and all of the stuff there. But I think that one of the things that I love about you is the fact that you were not always the nuts and bolts person, right? You had to go on your own growth journey to get to the place where you could lead this 8-figure company, where you could manage 25 plus employees. Talk to me a little bit about what that was for you. Like, what was your pathway to get to the leadership, mastery that you have right now?
So I started where I was. I'm not from an entrepreneurial family. I do not have a degree in business. I've never taken any business courses. My degree is actually in education. I'm a double major in education and music. And I started off my first career as a teacher. I taught music, I taught elementary school, and I also taught middle school for 10 years. So really at my core, I'm a teacher and leader. Like I love leading anyone who wants to listen, and I love teaching people new things. But in order for me to keep teaching relevant and important things, I had to keep learning myself. And through lots of different things that have happened over my life, it was the birth of my first child that really got me to step out of teaching and into my own business. And then it was in the growing of that business that I really became aware of Life Is Now as David. It was just a solo on his own at that time. And the power that mindset plays in your ability to achieve anything, whether that's your own business, whether that's your own life goals. It all starts with how you think about things. So for me, it really was, my big rule is I'm going to say yes. If it scares me, I'm going to say yes. So I started just by managing a small group of clients, like support coaching. Then I stepped into sales. Then I stepped into director of sales. Then I stepped into marketing and curriculum development because I have that background as well. And I just said yes to everything that I was asked. And with each of those yeses came an opportunity for me to learn something new, and also came an opportunity for me to teach something new. So, I started with Life Is Now in, I believe it was 2008. 2007, I was coaching with David. 2008, 2009, I became an actual member of his team. And then in 2016, I actually became CEO. So there's a long growth learning curve where I really learned every aspect of the business, which I think makes me so great for the role I'm in right now, because I know exactly who to hire and what the expectations are of those roles, because I've been in those roles. But I think the key for me was just, I didn't know if I could do those things or if I would be good at those things, but the opportunity presented itself. And I said yes. And I grew into the expectations of each of those roles.
Yeah. So the just say yes, that is a very powerful mantra, right? It's kind of like just believe, which is one of those pillar comments that I remember before it actually became one of your foundational principles. I remember David saying that at an event, just believe. And I was like, yeah, just believe, right? So for you, it was just say yes.
It was, for me, it was just say yes. Yep.
So we know that just saying yes is easier said than done. We know that when you know to say yes, when you have a coach or a mentor or a trainer or a guide or an inspiration saying, just say yes, you want to. But we also know that that no is going to rise up at some point. So talk to me a little bit about some of the resistance that you may have encountered on the way to becoming the CEO over the 16-year journey of time with Life Is Now.
Well, my first major role, other than just managing a handful of clients, was in sales. And I honestly think there's no better opportunity for personal growth than in learning sales, because you're like looking at yourself in a mirror every single day. You're up against all of your core fears. Are they going to reject me? Am I going to seem pushy? Am I going to be too much? Like all of when for me, really middle class mindset values of, don't ask that question. That might be seen as inappropriate. Don't say too much. Don't pry in this area. That was my first point of resistance, is really like I dove head first into sales, to the point where when I was doing my training, I would record my sales conversations and then immediately send them to David and say,
oh, that's the worst.
Right. And it's horrible. It's the most, like, you have to be so willing to be vulnerable, because you messed up somewhere. So it's admitting that, like, it's more important for me to learn a lesson here than it is for me to protect myself. Because protecting myself isn't going to get me closer to my goal. Learning this thing is going to get me closer to my goal.
Yeah, that first time that someone listened to a recorded sales call, I literally I was sitting white knuckling it through, and it was so painful. And I've given that exercise to my clients before, and I remember having to like, wait, there's 8 of you here. Why do I only have 5 sales calls? And and 3 of those people that sent sales calls sent more than 1 call. So clearly it is something that a lot of us have resistance around, looking at ourselves. And you have to do a lot of that work when you are growing into the realm of leadership.
You really do. It's the Leland Van Veldewaal quote that we've got on our wall, right? Like, what is it like?
The degree to which
a person can grow is directly proportional to the amount of truth they can accept about themselves without running away. The truth I needed to accept about myself was that I wasn't great at sales and I needed help. Like, I didn't have it all figured out, right? And I had to be okay with that. That was my very first point of resistance, was just like, that's a very vulnerable thing to do. And then also just calling people, like bugging people, am I bugging them? Like, I don't want to be a bother. Just getting over all the noise and the head chatter and everything else that went along with it. And then the second point was actually hiring other people to work under me and then training them. And who was I to do that? And the points of resistance are all around old limiting beliefs and patterns, right? Like, am I good enough? Am I lovable enough? Am I going to be abandoned? So it was just being able to, it basically just comes down to a willingness to experience whatever you need to experience, knowing that whatever happens, you're going to be okay.
Yeah. The knowing you're going to be okay part is, I think, where a lot of people stop. Like they have this belief that they're going to do this. They're going to push themselves past the moment of resistance. They're going to step into a difficult conversation, and then they're going to have some awful consequence. And it's almost never as bad as you think it is. In fact, almost invariably, it gives you insight that's so much better for you than had you just kept yourself quiet.
Correct.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about difficult conversations, because as a leader, you have to have a lot of them, right? And I know that you and David coach lawyers across the country, just like I do. So when you are encountering and you're talking to a business leader and their mindset is, it's too challenging to risk the relationship with this person to have the hold accountable conversation, or to ask the difficult questions, and they are struggling with that. How do you coach them through, one, having the conversation, and two, dealing with whatever the ramifications of that might be?
So I like to dial it back to the very beginning, because a lot of times people are at the point where they're in resistance to a difficult conversation because they didn't do the work to set everything up right from the beginning. So I'm a big fan of agreements. I think life works so much more smoothly when people are in an agreement with something, because then if a difficult conversation has to be held, it's not you versus them. It's how can I help you meet this agreement that you agreed to, that we both agreed to. So I really like to switch people out of that role of you versus them and into the role of us as allies, all heading toward a goal together. So what we do is, first of all, we establish agreements. Those agreements are set up in terms of measures of success. So how do I know that I'm successful in this role? And that's a combined effort. So I set up what I think someone in a successful role would need to accomplish. And then they also set up for themselves what would cause them to be successful. And the interesting thing is usually people have higher expectations for themselves than I even have for the role. But the idea is that you come together in a meeting of, okay, well, let's take some of yours and take some of mine. Are we in agreement that these are the measures of success? These are the expectations for the role? Yes, great. Then when those expectations aren't met, the conversation is very simple. It's, hey, we agreed on these measures of success, and I see that that's not being hit. How can I support you to hit this so it doesn't happen again? So you then become this ally rather than this dictator that's saying you didn't do this and what's wrong with you and what's going on here. The idea is that you're on the same team and you should all be aiming for the same goal. Therefore, there should never be this you versus them.
Yeah. So I love the way that you characterize that, because what it really sounds like is that you are ultimately coaching the person to the best self, right?
100%. It's interesting to me because someone said, a business owner said to me, I've just never been comfortable with authority. And I said to them, I've never considered myself an authority. Yes, I have decision making, but my job is to make my team members the best that they can be so that everyone wins, not to be this like pinnacle up here. Like I'm all for a meritocracy, right? Not a dictatorship. So I think it's really interesting that, business owners bring their own kind of their own filter to what leadership looks like based on their past experiences or what they've seen in the past, but it actually doesn't need to be that way at all. Having a hard conversation should be something that's actually pretty rare in a company that has open communication. Where difficult conversations become hard is when there is a lack of communication, is a lack of agreements, there is a lack of trust, and there is a fear of conflict.
Right. Well, I think that that's just it, though. I think a lot of companies have that, especially in the law, right? Because we learn as lawyers, we learn the hierarchy, right? There's managing partner, there's equity partner, there's senior associate, there's counsel, there's a line of authority all the way up. And I think jockeying for position to get yourself to the top of that hierarchy is something that's ingrained in you as you become a member of this profession. So when somebody is talking to you about how to shift their culture to be one that has that open communication, I'm sure they have a lot of questions about even how to begin that when they don't even have a framework for how to have that kind of conversation without a fear of taking something away from themselves as a leader.
Right. And that's where I think the most important thing for leaders to be is vulnerable.
Oh, yikes. What does that mean? What exactly are we doing? Are we showing up at the holiday party in our bikini? Are we telling everybody all of our deepest, darkest fears? Like, what does vulnerability mean in this context?
Vulnerability in this context means that you're not hiding anything, that when you make a mistake, you sunshine it. So you bring it out to the open and say, wow, I really missed the mark on this. Like, I made this mistake and this is what I learned from it. And this is what I'm going to do going forward. And that really shows your team that it's okay for them to make a mistake as well. Generally, a big breakdown happens when people start hiding their mistakes. I mean, I've experienced this with team members. I think I remember you experiencing this with some team members very, very early on, where, you know, the team member gets let go and you realize there's this whole like hornet's nest under the surface of mess that they've created, because you just didn't know, right? So the idea is that you create a culture where it's safe to make a mistake. It's safe to admit that you don't have all the answers, whether you're in a leadership role or you're, you know, the person posting on social media for, you know, $20 an hour. That the whole culture is based around, it's okay for you to make a mistake. The idea is that we're all learning together. And again, we're all on the same team and we're all going in the same direction. But the key with making a mistake is that you learn something from it so that the mistake doesn't repeat. If you as a leader show that it's okay, that you're okay being vulnerable, that opens the door for everybody else to be okay. If you as the leader think you need to be perfect and have this facade, that's what your team reflects back to you. And that's when you get blindsided, where all of a sudden you have an employee that just quits and doesn't show up to work one day and you have no idea why. Where if you create that culture, that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Well, I love that we're talking about culture, because culture is probably, you know, culture, of course, is built on the people, and people issues are right on up there with sales in terms of the challenge that you cannot engage in the process of managing or leading a person without having to, you know, shine a light on yourself and really look very clearly at how you are showing up and how you are communicating and how you're being perceived. And I know that that is a major point for a lot of the lawyers that I coach, and certainly I'm sure for those that you do as well. So talk to us a little bit about that. Like when you are working with a law firm owner on their leadership capacity and they want to grow a better team and they want to have that open culture, but they keep running into that wall of, I can't find the people that can do the work. And then they find the people that can do the work. So they say, all right, I'll tolerate the crappy attitude. I'll tolerate the secrets just because I'm so happy to finally have competence. That resistance, I know, is something that we have to really, really fight against. So how do you help people with that?
So we take a little bit of a unique perspective. The idea is, and you know, we're big proponents and teachers of universal law. So the idea is that in terms of the law of polarity is that there can't be a desire without the way for that desire to be met. So if you have an idea of an employee that you need to hire, then that means that employee is out there. You just need to create, excuse me, the right environment, the right job description, the right everything to attract them. So the idea is that you can have it all if you create the right environment. And there are certain things that A players look for when they're looking for a job, when they're looking for a role, right? And the A player kind of checks all the boxes. They're a culture fit, they're hungry, they're humble, they have high emotional intelligence, they're a great fit for your team. And a big key thing that I think law firm owners always forget is to lead with a vision. So they want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And what I see law firm owners doing the most frequently is focusing more on the work than on the work. They're focusing on the little things that need to be done, and they're missing the importance of why they're doing what they're doing and the impact that it's having on people's lives. Whether that's an immigration attorney that's working to change laws, whether that's an estate attorney that just helped, you know, a family avoid some major catastrophe. Law firm owners don't always share those big wins with their team. They don't, in my opinion, share their big vision of what they see their impact being to their employees. And that's really what starts to build culture. People want to work. They don't just want to show up. So some people want to show up, just, you know, check a list, check the boxes on a list and go home. But an A player wants to be a part of something, right? And if I could give one piece of advice to law firm owners, it's speak about your vision every single day. Talk about your client wins. Allow your team, even the lowest paying, least important role. I think all roles are equally important, by the way, but in like every single person that has touched that client gets to share in those wins. And that just creates momentum. It creates the feeling that people are helping with the expansion of someone else. And I think the other thing is people also need to see a way for them to expand in the role that they're in. So not actually talking to their employees about what their own personal goals are, where they see themselves in a year and a half, what aspirations they have, I think is a really big missed opportunity for law firm owners as well.
Yeah, so I love all of that. I love the idea that a law firm owner should be speaking their vision all the time, right? And I think so much of this goes back to what you said earlier, which is the idea that you had the thought at one point, like, who am I to be managing all these people? I think a lot of law firm owners really struggle with that, like the idea that the ego wants to be big and powerful, and typically that is to overcome some feeling of deficit that they aren't aware of, or that they're aware of but they're masking. But then when they start speaking, they're like, oh God, I don't want to tell people because I don't want people to know how egotistical I am. When it really isn't about the ego, it really is about what the purpose of the work is. And a lot of times we can't differentiate those two.
Right. It's about the meaning, right? Like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I coming to work every day doing this? What impact am I having? And when a leader speaks their vision, it actually isn't about them at all. It's about the vision of the firm, the vision of the entity that is the firm. It's not just them.
Yeah. So I want to circle back to something that we talked about just very briefly, and I mentioned it at the very beginning of the episode, which is that you had to go on a journey to get to the place where you are, and you kind of shared with us that from 2008ish to 2016 you got to CEO, which means you had been with the company for a long time and you had gone through various different iterations, various different roles. There are a lot of people that I know would love to say, I will write away my soul to the devil and sign a very big check if I could just hire somebody today who's already a Steph, right? I want my Stephanie now. And of course, we know that it's doable, right? There are people that hire straight into their C-suite, but then there are a lot of people that have to kind of grow up their team. And David recently did a podcast episode on the Successful Mind podcast. Shout out to the Successful Mind podcast. It's an excellent show, highly recommend. And he talked about you and your journey and the fact that you came in and you were scrappy, right? You were learning everything. You were paying to take yourself places. You were soaking up all the coaching that he had to offer so that you could really be his mentee and his protege. And I think a lot of people don't want to have to go through, close to a decade of life with someone before they get there. So how do you help lawyers when they say, I want that second in command, I want that integrator, that EOS model integrator, but I don't know how to find them, I don't know how to grow them. How do you help someone even achieve the level of success through another person that David has been able to achieve through having you on his team?
So I think part of it is putting a framework around it, right? A lot of people reach out to me and say, oh, I need my own stuff. And it's from a feeling of desperation. It's like, I just want someone who can step into my brain and read my mind and do all the things that I hate doing, right? Which isn't going to happen. There's work involved here. Like, it's just not going to happen. But they've worked themselves to a point where they're so overwhelmed. They feel like they're a prisoner to their own business. They got into business because they wanted freedom and they ended up creating a job for themselves where they work more than anyone else that works for them, or they feel guilty for taking time off because what will their team think if they're not the hardest working person in the firm? But the idea is to first put a framework around it. So to get really clear on the exact specifications of who they need. A lot of people don't need someone like me in their business. They need a law firm administrator. They need an executive assistant. They need someone that can implement and take off some of the $10, $12, and $15 tasks off of their desk so that they can breathe and actually start looking at what they can be doing in terms of business development and law firm growth. So the first thing I do is have them, and this is a big pain, but for like a week and a half, write down every single thing that they do. So you start to get really clear on all the things that you're doing as a law firm owner that you have absolutely no business doing. And in fact, by doing them, you're robbing the company, like you're stealing money from the company by doing those things. And then we categorize those things into different roles. And then we create job descriptions for whichever role. And actually, not very often is it actually an integrator that they need. They need someone to just to do the things that they should not be doing so that they can stay in their genius. There's a really great book. I'm sure you know of it. It's called Rocket Fuel. And it lays out the differences between the visionary and the integrator. Now, I'm a little bit different because I am both visionary and integrator. So I step into the visionary role with David sometimes. But for every visionary, you really need that person that's gonna implement, that's gonna manage the team. So I think the first thing is just recognizing that your desire to have so embarrassing to even say it, to have a Steph is really mostly coming from this place of, please just, I need some relief. Like, I just need some relief. And knowing that there is a path forward, there is a way for you to get that, but you've got to be really clear on the specific roles and responsibilities that are required so that you get really clear on who that ideal person is for you.
Yeah, well, so the idea of people wanting a staff and wanting that freedom oftentimes comes because people don't want to be leaders. And it would have never occurred to me when I first started Law Firm Mentor and first started coaching lawyers that someone would not want to be the leader. In fact, for me, I loved being boots on the ground lawyering. I would love to be in the courtroom. But once I got to the place where I had to learn the competencies and really sharpen the edge of how to effectively communicate, how to see other people through to their success. And that then became its own process. That became the new high. Like, there's really nothing like developing another person and seeing them get those wins where you would have been doing it before, but now you're seeing someone else do it through your strategy, through your processes, through the knowledge that you've shared with them. And so it occurred to me that, everyone would want to do this. And I met lawyers and they were like, no, I just want to go to court. I don't want to have to manage people. I don't want to have to talk to people. I don't want to have to lead people. I just want to sign the checks and go to court. And there are people that have that mindset. And I had to learn the competencies of how to coach someone, how to be the doer, and how to outsource the leadership and the management. So what do you say to a law firm owner that says to you, I don't want to lead? Like, that's not something that's in my purview. I want to just be over here and be the technician, but I want to own the company and get the spoils, if you will, of having my own entity.
Yeah, it happens a lot, actually, where especially in law firms, the law firm owner just loves, like, that's something they're not willing to give up. They don't have any desire to manage people. And I'm totally on board with that. I think you can have whatever you want in your business as long as you're willing to admit what it is that you want and then do the work to fill the gaps. And I think that starts with what your core values are, because you're going to hire based on your core values and your core competencies, what your firm's sole purpose is, because those are the things that need to be communicated to someone that you're going to bring in to actually run your business so that you can do what you want to do within the business. And I think that's another area that's often kind of just a cookie cutter. This is my mission statement, and it's way more than just a mission statement. It is, this is who I am. This is what I believe. This is what I want my law firm to stand for. This is what I know I'm good at, and this is what I know I'm not good at. So that could be clearly communicated to someone to make sure that first there is a value match and a vision match. Because if there is not a value match, then that is not someone that you want to hire to come and run your company, because it will be an absolute nightmare and you will be butting heads the entire time.
Yeah. So, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I just have to like dial down on this a little bit more, because if you are the person whose name is on the door, right? You are the person who ultimately has the highest level of responsibility in the company. You have the duty to supervise. You have all of the authority required under the rules of professional conduct. How can you not be a leader simply by virtue of being the person whose name is on the door?
Well, I think you can use us as a perfect example. So David would not say that he is the leader of this company. He would say that I'm the leader of the company, but it's actually his company, right? He's standing in what he does best, which is teaching, coaching, being on stages, being the thought leader, getting his message out. That's what he wants to do. Very similar to an attorney who's highly skilled and just wants to go to court. So the idea is that he's still an incredibly important part of the company. His vision does matter, just like someone who's not the leader, but he knows that he's not the best person to lead the team, that the team won't win unless he finds someone that can lead the team. Does that help?
Yeah, that does help. That does help. And I think what you said before about this idea that, you learned all these different roles in your company, right? To get to the place where you could effectively hire people, oversee them, hold them accountable to the responsibilities of the role. But that is a lot of growth and development. And, the legal world is so specialized that I don't know that you're going to have somebody who's going to come in as a file clerk and then be a marketing assistant and then be a paralegal and then be an attorney. I mean, sometimes you do. Sometimes people can grow through and become more educated and shift, but most times people are kind of in a lane. So what do you say to the person that questions the idea of getting someone who can lead effectively at a high level because they want to be the talent, right? They want to be the star on stage. They don't want to be the person who is behind the scenes with the spreadsheet, but they need that person, and that person has to come in really boots on the grounds from the outside in. How do you get that person?
Well, I think you need to really look for someone who understands people and who also understands structure and framework, right? So you're not going to find a me in a law firm, but you will find people that have different experiences that could lend really, really well to your law firm. So you're probably not going to have someone that starts at the very bottom and works their way up, but you will find people who have lots of different experience to lend and use their talents to benefit your company. The idea is that the person that you find is on board with your vision and motivated by your vision, right? So you're on the same page there. Has a strong people management, high emotional intelligence. So they understand people. They don't see management as you versus them. They see management as we're all on the same team. They see their role like a coach sees their role. So you look at a professional sports team, that coach's job is to make sure they've got the very best person in each of those roles so that that team can win a championship, right? And they take that very seriously. So they have the ability to say to themselves, what decision is in the best interest of the company right now? And how does that relate to our company goals and our company values? That gets picked up in your reference calls, asking specific questions in your reference calls, looking at what their past experiences are, giving them scenarios as to how they would respond in certain instances. So it really is this overall picture of those key components that make someone that operator, that leader of the company, so the other person can step down. And it also happens gradually over time. So you hire someone and then you're just like, take this and run with it. It's probably one of the worst things that you could do to someone coming in, right? Trust is earned. So you hand things off little by little. They prove themselves through their actions. You track performance data, and eventually they're completely integrated and you've developed trust with each other so that you can say, as the law firm owner, I trust this person to make the best decisions for this company, and they trust me not to step into their role.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's quite a process that's involved in trying to get not just the right person, but get the right person overseeing your company in the right way, consistent
Yes.
with what you desire as a leader.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a lot to this. And the one thing that I always appreciate when I talk to you, Stephanie, is the fact that you have not just lived through the process, but it sounds like you have not only created a process for yourself, but you have a way of helping people to structure a process for themselves, which is the reason why you and David make such a dynamic team, right? There's the mindset and the tactical together to help leaders to really create the businesses that they desire.
Yeah, he's really the what and why, and I'm the how. Let's just put it that way.
I love it. I love it. Listen, we need the what, why, and how in every company and what we're doing, right?
Yes, 100%.
All right. So it's been great talking to you, Stephanie. As always, you are such a bright light of hope for the business owners out there. And I've grown so much from knowing you over all these years and all the things that you've done personally in coaching me, but also in working with my clients. You know, we do tell clients, you know, sometimes you need more than just one coach. And we will oftentimes say to them, you know, I want you to go to a place where I know that you will also get additional support with some of the things that we're helping you to create as well. So with that, if someone wants to learn more about Life is Now, get in contact with you and possibly work with your company, how can they do that?
So you've already given us a nice little plug for the Successful Mind podcast. We put out tons of free material on the Successful Mind podcast. It's some of our best stuff. It's lessons on anything from wealth mindset to leadership. Our website right now is under rebrand, but our website is davidnagel.com. And you can follow us on Instagram as well. My Instagram handle is just at Steph with a PH Tuss.
All right, good stuff. We will have all of those links in our show notes. And I want to thank Steph again for being a wonderful guest. Thank you all for watching. And you are listening to the Crushing Chaos with Law Firm Mentor podcast. I am Allison Williams, your Law Firm Mentor. I'll see you next show.